Good evening, everybody. Welcome to First Center, First Church. Welcome to our Louise Hay class. Many of you have signed on, and sometimes you don't know what you've signed on to. Somewhere along the line, you expressed interest in either one of our classes or Louise Hay, and we now have a broadcast list of, I think, almost 5,000 people. That's one of the reasons that we need to do an annual membership, because some people come and they stay for a while, and some people, are here often. You see them. So each year, those of you who are members, just send us a notice, renewing your membership. And for anybody who's new who would like to join us, there's a membership form, or indicate that you want to join. We suggest a love offering for people of $50 per year, but on the other side of the coin, we know not everybody is in a position to donate the $50. So on the form, simply indicate if you need a scholarship, there's a box, and then you'll be granted the same membership. So our desire here is to continue reaching people, helping people with the message of Louise Hay and Ernest Holmes, the New Thought message. The Louise Hay class has been going on for many, many years. Her book was written in, I think, 1987. I acquired it myself, I think, in a year or two later. And I've been facilitating these discussion groups ever since. She coincidentally happened to also be a student here at this center in New York City. So it's kind of ironic in a way that I wound up coming here, many years later. She was one of my mentors and sponsored me for different things when I was first getting into the ministry. We have ongoing classes about self-healing every Thursday right now. The other little announcement that Jimmy covered everything, I think, is in 2023, we've got a couple new programs coming on. We'll have some version it'll be a Science of Mind class for those of you who want to do a little bit deeper study. We have a scholarship. We have some grant money to help underprivileged teenagers and youth, and I'll announce more about that. We have to figure out what the criteria is for its use first. So we've got some exciting things going on. So let's get into tonight's lesson. Also on Sunday, Jimmy and I are going to have some food here, and we're going to have a Christmas or a seasonal holiday lesson at 10:45. And for those of you who would like to join us, it won't be probably any traditional Christmas meal, but we will have food here. So you're invited. Just let us know if you're coming so we can plan it properly. Last week's lesson was centered around some self-healing ideas of Louise Hay, and mostly it was about taking care of our bodies. And we talked a little bit about addictions and how many of the things that we become addicted to happen because we were not getting our needs fulfilled in one way or another. So maybe we started smoking or started drinking, or maybe the things that people can be addicted to are endless. I have a friend who gambles a lot. Somebody else gets into debt and shops a lot to make them feel better. Typically, it's some kind of behavior, some action that gives you temporary relief. And oftentimes, the very thing that gives you temporary relief can wind up becoming a bigger problem. It becomes a big problem. I know when I was younger, I drank too much. I was in high school, and I did so for probably 8 years, and it became a big problem, resulting in car accidents and all kinds of things. Initially, Louise said, these addictions seem to work, make us feel better, but in the long run, they're not the answer. So When people are doing too much of anything, it's often a sign that they're fulfilling an unmet need. So we talked about that last week a bit. Today we're continuing on with the idea of loving ourselves more. We're always talking about loving ourselves more. And I'm following Louise Hay's seminar I have for the past 2 weeks, and I will for another week. It was a seminar I believe I attended also, and I'm adding to it here and there. Louise spoke in that seminar next about the idea of food, and she taught how loving ourselves involved becoming more aware of what good food and healthy foods are. I remember when I was a kid, there was a pyramid, and the things that were considered really healthy food and all that, of course, that's a lot of years ago since I was a kid, but things have changed a lot, right? So it's smart for us to educate ourselves about food. She noted that our culture eats a ton of fast food and processed food and foods with lots of things like fructose and things that are sugar and make you want to eat more of them, and they're not necessarily the best things in the world for us. So food, aside from hopefully being delicious for all of us, Louise Hay suggested ought to be good for us. And over the years, I don't know about any of you, but I've learned to eat better food. I've learned what good food is. And Louise would say, your body will soon start to feel better and better the more you eat, I guess you could say whole foods. Whole foods, of course, are going to be things that are not so much processed and packaged and filled with all kinds of ingredients. It's not my area of expertise, but I have certainly been to a couple of nutritionists, and I've learned, to eat foods that are better for my body. She went on to say, in the same way in our teaching, that we release the need for negative thoughts as we tend our garden. We spoke about that last week. When we're thinking negative thoughts, that's like putting seeds into the soil of mind, and like will produce like. So we learn here to interrupt the conversation we have of negativity, or the stinking thinking that some people learned in the 12-step programs. We learn to interrupt that, and we neutralize the negative thought with a positive and life-giving thought. So, same thing with food. The more we learn what healthy food is and what's best for our body, we trade the lesser for the greater. Her suggestion was, start noticing what makes your body feel good and what gives you more energy and what doesn't. Some kinds of food, you eat them, especially certain types of carbohydrates, they may make you feel satiated and good, for a short period of time, but then the thing is, when your blood sugar adjusts, you'll be ravenous again. So start noticing what gives you good energy, were her exact words. And she said, also pay attention to what you think is tearing you down or not really working well. So we can either do that, she thought, by reading and implementing trial by error. And many of us today, when Louise was writing this material, she probably didn't have the same access to computers as we all do. So she said we can do it by trial and error. Today, I think you can really find a lot of good information, online yourself. Or she suggested you can find a good nutritionist to go to who'll know some of these answers and can really help you. And she said that's a good idea because everyone, first of all, your medical situation is different, your body is different, and generally all of us would be better off trying to eat more whole foods, right? Different people have different things, and none of us pretend to be doctors. She said next, generally speaking, most of us could cut back on processed foods and junk foods and try to incorporate more whole foods. She mentioned also, and I've heard this before, not all doctors surprisingly have a lot of knowledge about good nutrition. I have a friend who's a physician who told me that he didn't really have much education at all on good nutrition. So if you have a doctor who knows a bit about nutrition really, then that's really great. Otherwise, finding a nutritionist could be a very smart thing. Also, if you're trying to manage your weight and be optimal, get optimal weight. I have a lot of friends who get personal trainers and things like that. But, the big thing is, aside from exercises, taking a look at the fuel, the food you eat. Food is medicine, so paying attention to that. Once again, she made the point of saying every body is different from every other body. No one thing, something might be good for your mother or your aunt or someone, may not be the best for you. So all I can say here is it's very important to eat good food. I know I've made lots of adjustments in my life. As I've gotten to a certain point in my life, they've told me I need to watch the fat intake, the sugar intake. And they said, you can either keep going in a certain direction and then you most likely will have all these different things happen to you, or you can make these lifestyle changes. So part of loving yourself is about making some lifestyle changes, and that's what Louise was talking about. Louise also, after talking about food, she said she absolutely loved acupuncture and the benefits she derived from it. And then I got to thinking that for 2 or 3 years, I was going to see an acupuncturist. There was a school in Florida, and it was very inexpensive. And it actually worked wonders. I remember it sounds scary, but it really isn't. I remember it being very relaxing. They'd be stimulating nerves in your body, and it's just like an overall sense of, wellness. It's really quite wonderful. And that would happen just going a few weeks. So any of these things, along with changing your fuel or your food, can rather quickly make you feel better. So there's many different ways and things that you can do to take care of your body. We usually talk only about consciousness here. I mean, that's our main thing, our thoughts, our thinking, right? But, this is part of her program, so I thought I'd mention it tonight. Years ago, I got involved in another 12-step program. It was FAA, which is called Food Addicts. There's another program, which was Overeaters. I like them both. I like the FAA better because that taught me the relationship between all the sugars and the white flours and all of that type of thing that I would love to eat, but then I would wind up being hungry very shortly thereafter. So I gained a lot of information. That's not the same thing as going to a nutritionist, but again, tonight's suggestion is to really understand that food is important. You need it. You can't not eat. And usually when you're on a crazy fad diet, it'll be kind of a yo-yo thing. So finding something that's really good for your body and finding somebody who knows something about nutrition is really a great suggestion. From that section of the seminar, Louise next moved into the subject of mirror work. And I smile when I think of mirror work because I've conducted a lot of workshops with people doing mirror work. And I remember at the time thinking this is silly, and I know some of you might think it's silly, but it isn't. I remember Bill Tolliver, who was one of my teachers in the 90s, used to say, I want you all to go home tonight after class and stand in front of a mirror, a full-length mirror, and take your clothes all off, be by yourself and look at yourself and say, I love, accept, and approve of you exactly as you are, and see everybody go, oh my God, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. So I don't know if I ever did that anyway, but Louise was focused on mirror work. She thought it was really important. I guess the question I'm supposed to throw out that she threw out that day, have any of you and how many of you have done mirror work? Of course, I see an ocean of people that are online tonight, and so I'm going to assume some of you have, right? Louise said, mirror work is my favorite. She loved it so much, saying, I've seen so many people change their lives by merely looking in their mirror and saying, I love you, and then looking at themselves again and say, I really love you. She said, don't miss the chance to do that. Every time you go into the bathroom or you're in a hallway, there's a mirror. Give yourself a quick look. Say, I love you. Acknowledge you. I love you. At first, this could seem untrue. She said, even weird. It can sometimes, in a few people, bring up sadness. Or you might find yourself being critical, too, of yourself. But it's really good. When this happens, though, it might take you back. It's good, though, because you're going to see some part of yourself that is judging yourself about where you are, and that's helpful. I've told this story a couple of times before, but I was doing a mirror group in Miami for a couple of years at least, or longer, and one summer, there was a group, I don't know, 10, 12 or more people that were there. And for a few months, there was a lady who came in and, she kind of a lot resembled Cindy Crawford like 20 years ago. And we're all there, passing their mirror around and holding it up to our faces and saying, I love, accept, and approve of you exactly as you are. And, people struggle with that, and but, we were getting better at it, and some of it we would start to say, I'm starting to like myself better and all of that. So there was this lady there that she looked like she belonged, from Mount Olympus. She was, quite outstandingly beautiful. And what was a lesson for all of us was she had the toughest time of everybody with that mirror. And I remember as she was holding it up to her face, she was shaken up and, tears would start to flow from her face and stuff. And, then we passed it around because none of us were trying to make anybody feel bad, right? That what it showed us, because we're looking at ourselves, like regular people, and it just shows you people are in different places when it comes to that whole idea of connecting with themselves and loving themselves and approving of themselves. I do recall the lady hanging with it, and I do remember her story, which I won't get into here, but she'd been through a lot, and she was in a marriage, and I don't know can't remember if it was problematic or not, but she had a very difficult time looking into her own eyes and even thinking that she was attractive, which was amazing to the rest of us. And I remember before she left, she got to a point where she could look in the mirror and say, I'm learning to like you more and more. So I guess one of the reasons I told this story is this is a process for people. Deep in the center of our being, Louise would say there's an infinite well of love. It's very true because you're connected with Source. But not everybody's connected with that. I mean, you are in truth and in fact you're connected with Source, but you may not be aware of it. In fact, you may be having some type of a really big story going on that you're unacceptable or you're not attractive. And, our job here is loving ourselves. As Bill Tolliver would say, even if you're stark naked in front of a mirror and you're no longer 18 or you're no longer 28 or 38, it's just the process of loving yourself as you are, and honoring the fact that you've had a life and you've been through a lot, and just let go of that criticism and give yourself that that full blast, I love you. I love you. And, and never miss the chance, she said, of passing a mirror without giving yourself that nod. It might happen in just the twinkle of your eye, but connect with it. She said, as you do that, your inner energy is going to begin to shift. Letting go, of course, this is our wheelhouse. Letting go of destructive thoughts and behaviors and accepting ourselves as naturally lovable, it becomes so much easier as we start to just begin. Use the mirror, it's a really good technique. Don't miss a chance, because we really want to let go of a lot of this stuff that just keeps on creating and recreating the negative experiences of our life. Following Louise's instructions, there are several ways you can practice mirror work. She said, I like to do it first thing in the morning. We usually generally walk into a bathroom first thing in the morning and look in the mirror and say, I love you. And she said, you might even ask of yourself, first of all, start saying, I love you. Next thing, you might even ask, as you're looking at yourself, what can I do for you today? What can I do for you to make you happy? Or how can I make you happy? You better go in the bathroom and close the door because other people think you're crazy. But look into the eyes and say, what can I do to make you happy? What can I do for you today? Louise, if she were in the group today and you were all with her, she would say, do you ever ask yourself questions like that? And if you don't, here's a suggestion. She said, each morning make a point to check in with yourself in the mirror and acknowledge yourself. Just look yourself in the eye, especially first thing in the morning, and then listen. Listen to what you hear, your inner, dialogue that I talk about all the time. Notice if you connect, or if something comes up. You'll be surprised at what comes up if you say, I love you. And, sometimes you say, oh, cripes, you look like you're a mess. You can go to criticism very quickly. Or you might just give yourself a smile and brighten up. And so there's no right or wrong to this, but she wants you to start noticing, because that's part of that inner dialogue that we all have that, as you know, Thursday nights here, we attempt to turn around. She said, you may not get any message to begin with because you may be so used to beating yourself up that you don't even know how to respond to a kind, loving thought. So you might say, I love you. So you might not get a message. More often, though, you'll get a message, and it may or may not be positive, but practice saying I love you and giving yourself some other positive messaging. Listen to what comes back. If something unpleasant happens, during the day, here's another suggestion she has for us in this mirror work exercise. If you're working in a job and, you're going through a tough time and you just have your coworker, your subordinate, your boss, whoever it is, rather than carrying a resentment, you might quietly in the next few minutes excuse yourself and go to the restroom and look in the mirror and say, I love you. And then rather than carrying on the story about what she said or they said, look in the mirror and say, I love you anyway. And if you think, oh, I shouldn't have said that, tell yourself, I love you anyway. She said, because what you want to realize, she says, you're studying New Thought and metaphysics. She said, events, life experiences, come and go and come and go. And what we want to do is start to reinterpret them, cancel out the negatives, connect with our inner self. The mirror can be a very big aid. She said, but the love that you have for yourself is the constant thing. All these events and troublesome times and interactions come and go, but the love that you have for yourself needs to be constant. It's important that you keep that high watch. It's important that you keep working on loving yourself. Never, never, never criticize yourself. And I know we all do it. So I'm just saying, when you notice that you're criticizing yourself, when you're calling yourself a dumb so-and-so, or you're saying, when you're really being tough on yourself, find the way to stop it, first of all, and tell yourself it's not true. I release the need to think this way. I know the truth of me is that I'm good, I'm valuable, I'm important. I love myself the way I am. I love, accept, and approve of myself. Begin to change those negative, hurtful places in consciousness around, because you're really the only one that can do it. Right? Because other people run up and say, oh, really, don't worry about that person. They don't know anything. That's all well-intentioned. But the thing is, you want to have that conversation within yourself, move towards, I forgive you. I love you. I'm not going to do that again. I intend to do something different. But all your effort wants to be channeled towards moving towards self-acceptance and self-approval. So again, she said, events, all of them, come and go. We make mistakes. We're human. We're growing. We're learning. We're all spiritual beings, evolved in growth. And please don't beat yourself up for being where you are. The most important thing, loving yourself is the constant, and it's the most important thing in your life. It's not the experience of the moment, but the fact that you love yourself. If something wonderful happens, on the other hand, she said, go into that restroom too and say, thank you, thank you. So, hadn't heard that one in a long time. I've heard to go there when you're having a tough day, but when something wonderful happens, acknowledge it. And she thinks go right in there and look yourself in the eye and say it. So, give it a try. I think I might give that a try too. All of this is going to help you. You might think it's silly. You might think you're above it. She said, but it's going to help you immensely if you get in the habit of doing it. Acknowledge yourself for having created this wonderful day or this wonderful situation. We speed through our lives and we have so many wonderful experiences, but she says, take a moment and acknowledge yourself for having created this wonderful afternoon or evening, or this new friendship, or everything and anything. Give thanks, right? Because the thing about gratitude, the more you have gratitude, it's a causative agent. Acknowledge yourself for having created this wonderful thing. Give thanks. The more we learn to do that, our whole world opens up. We create avenues in mind where we see more good. Regarding mirror work, you can do really important forgiveness work in the mirror also. You might not have the courage to go up and work on forgiveness with a total stranger yet. You may have, there may be a lot of reluctance, but you can do a lot of work with the mirror that'll pave the way for you. She said, first of all, in the mirror, look into your own eyes and say, I forgive you. I love you. I forgive you. I forgive you for holding on too long to whatever this pattern has been. You might be having been really less than wonderful for a long, long time, and she's saying, look into your own eyes and say, I forgive you. I forgive you for holding on to this grudge, this resentment, whatever it is, for so long. I forgive you for not loving yourself. It's all right. I release this now. I forgive you. I love you. I forgive you for whatever has happened, for whatever you know, whatever you've done, whatever you have failed to do. Louise very compassionately said to that group, we are so, so, so unmercifully hard on ourselves. She says, my goodness, we've been raised in these families and we've had it with us all our lives. She said, we're so judgmental and we're so critical. She said, remember, you've heard this before. Remember how often you use the word should. It's always a word that gives away clues. In her book, she said, if you use it often, she said it might indicate that there's a pattern of rigidity within you. I laughed when I first heard that. I laughed a few times after I heard that because I had strong opinions, really strong opinions, and I would tell everybody what they should do. Of course, what I didn't realize back then is I was telling everybody they were wrong about 90% of the time. That word is such a powerful word, and as you're really learning to love yourself, you'll find that you use it much, much less. Nobody really likes to be told that word. It's like a command. It's really essentially saying not good enough. And the thing is, when we're using it toward others, people kind of shrink from us because they're being told essentially that who they are, what they're doing is wrong. And it's also indication of, what lives inside of us, a lot of judgment. And, there's an old expression, life gives clues. If you notice that you're doing that a lot, that could be a spiritual work for a couple of months or maybe even a year, just learning to stop using that word and its synonyms and being less directive, because a great segue or movement from being so rigid would be saying to a person, well, Joe, instead of should, did you ever think you could try it this way? Or you could try it this way? Unless you have a better idea. See, that's great. It's a great sales technique too. It's called a choice close in sales. But the thing is, it's heard better because you're deferring to the person so he or she can make up their own mind and you're not telling them what to do. So pay attention to that word and all of its synonyms. When you're using it, just smile at yourself, and you might say, there you go again. Louise thought that word itself was probably one of the worst words in the English language, and years later I figured it had about 6 synonyms that are equally judgmental. The big lesson, though, is if you're doing it, you've heard the expression, I got a finger pointing over here at Jimmy, I'm pointing at Jimmy. That would mean that I have 3 pointing at me. So if I'm all focused on what's wrong with everybody, in most cases that would suggest that I'm not very well focused on the things within myself that could be addressed. All of us can use more forgiveness on a daily basis. We can forgive ourselves for our thoughts. We can forgive ourselves for the things we say, the things we do. And then we can learn to extend that forgiveness to other people. People are people. They're doing the best that they can. That's the thing to remember. My goodness. I have been my lifetime involved with people with so many resentments, and I've had a few of my own, and I'm resolved to let go of them and have no resentments towards anybody. There's an old expression, I refuse to be offended, and, be the first to forgive, because if you're hanging on to any resentments, the person who's being hurt most is yourself. So Louise Hay said, I look into the mirror and I say, I am forgiven. And she'll look in her eyes again and she say, I forgive. And she says, and I forgive you. She's looking at herself and she said, I am forgiven. And she said it again for emphasis. And she said, furthermore, know that it works both ways. You can talk to other people in the mirror. Now, this would be the part where you're really afraid to talk to somebody. Maybe possibly someone's passed away. And you can talk to people in the mirror and tell people things in the mirror that you'd be afraid to say in person, or that you can no longer say in person. And she said that process can clean up a lot of old issues that you have still within you. She says you can forgive them. And you can also look into that mirror and you can ask for love and approval. She says it's a wonderful way to talk to your parents or part of a relationship. She said you might be afraid or intimidated about some of the professional doctors or whoever they are in your life, or your boss or whatever. She says, connect with the mirror and say it there. You can say all kinds of things that you might be afraid of saying otherwise, but get it out. But I think the last thing you always want to say when you do any mirror work is what you would like is their love and their acceptance. Because that's what everybody really is looking for, is love and acceptance. We all want to love. We all want love, and we want approval from the people in our lives that are important. So the mirror can be a fantastic tool for all of us to use to some extent. And the more love we give, the more we're going to get. It's kind of like supporting the center, supporting anything that's giving you good. We don't talk a lot about money here, but whatever anyone sends us, be it $1 or $100, we treat it the same. It's a great thing. And the thing is, the more you're able to give of your money or your time or your attention, it'll make you feel good. It does a great gift. It does great good for you, and it also blesses the other person. Regarding affirmations in the mirror, they're always powerful because the mirror always, reflects back the truth. In other words, if I'm not feeling like I love myself, I look in the mirror, that mirror is going to let me know that I'm not connecting with it. If you look in the mirror and you immediately hear negative stuff, I look macrothy, my complexion, I look terrible. If you start hearing that stuff, that's a gift for you. It's giving you a clue on some things you might do, and to bring yourself to self-acceptance, and maybe give you some ideas what you can do for better rest and taking better care of yourself. She went on to say, if you look into the mirror and you say, I love you, and you hear, who are you kidding? No, you don't. She says, then you're going to know that you have a negative pattern, a negative thought passing through. It's like the weed in the garden we talked about last week when I was talking about Catherine's farm out there. When you notice you got these negative thoughts, these are like negative weeds. This is the time to deal with them, to pull them out, to neutralize them and replace them with the truth. Louise said whenever she found that she was thinking a negative thought after an affirmation in the mirror, she would say, thank you for sharing, because she knew that would be something that she would want to work on. Thank you for sharing. When you acknowledge that the negative thought is there, you don't give it a lot of importance, but you do acknowledge it. And if it's a strong negative, then you're going to hopefully neutralize it with a positive affirmation right there and then. And then just let it go. At least once a day, she suggested look into your eyes. I say do it more often because everyone's near a mirror more than once. Look into your eyes once a day and say, I love you, really, really, I do. I love you. And and she said, when it comes to loving yourself, she says, you can do that right now. You can do it in the broadcast. You can do it after the broadcast. Just start doing it. It's kind of like certain affirmations I used to use when I was younger. I'm supplied and supported. This is God in my life. I would say those things hundreds of times a day. I did because it was a time in my life where it seemed like everything was going to hell. So I needed to have a switch thought, an affirmation that I could keep doing. So think about, really consider the mirror work. I haven't thought about it a long time, but I do it occasionally, and now I'm going to do it more. As for loving yourself, always, always begin right now. Don't wait till you get well. Don't wait till you lose weight. Don't wait, in other words, I'll love myself when I lose 15 pounds. I'll go out on a date when I do this. I'll do this when that happens. She said, wherever you are, whatever you feel you look like, begin that conversation now. Don't wait until anything happens. Don't make it contingent upon any future event. You see, if you're dissatisfied with yourself now and you think, oh, well, I'll love myself more when I do this or that, I lose the weight or I'm in a new relationship, she said, believe me, You'll lose the weight, you'll get the new job, you'll have the new relationship, and you're still going to be unhappy and dissatisfied with yourself because the dissatisfaction with yourself is a habit pattern, and that's the thing that has to go. Louise spoke of cancer. You know, she had it twice. And she said, look, I've got to really get at the pattern underneath these cancers. She says, I'm just going to bring forth another one. So we want to get at the underlying patterns. And when we find that we're being critical of ourselves, you know, those are clues as to, you know, where we can do the work. She said, if you can be satisfied with yourself now and get into that mirror and, you know, accept those affirmative thoughts now, if you can love and support and approve of yourself now, then when the good things come into your life and the new things come in, you're going to be really able to enjoy them much more. You're really going to be able to have a wonderful time. So don't wait. Like in all of this, the 12-step programs, practicing new thought, it's practicing. She said the same thing you'll see here in an AA meeting, which is willingness is the key. Begin. Willingness is the key that opens the door. It's the most important thing. Just be willing. Right after this broadcast, go in and give yourself a dose of love. Just be willing. Say to yourself, I'm ready now to love myself. I'm ready to let my life change, and I'm willing. You might not know how to do it. You don't have to have all the answers. Just the fact that you're on a class like this and a call like this each week, you're going to wind up changing that inner conversation around, because we're going to keep on reminding you that that inner conversation is producing your life. So you're going to learn to interrupt the negative thoughts and release them into the nothingness from whence they came and replace them with positive thoughts. So you don't have to know all the answers. You just need to have the willingness. It may seem sort of scary practicing all these things. And she says, if it all sounds like it's too much, then just start by saying, I'm willing to learn to love myself. I'm willing to learn to love myself. And believe me, the universe will hear you, because the universe always says yes to what you say and you start to believe. Your subconscious mind is always responding to you affirmatively. Such a beautiful idea. It also means if your subconscious mind is being bombarded with negativity, it responds to that also. So we're smart people here, most of us, all of us, right? I had a great teacher once who said, don't die dumb. And he put that right on the marquee one day. I nearly dropped dead. He said, don't die dumb. We don't need to keep thinking the negative thoughts. We can consciously begin to bathe ourselves in the positive thoughts. I love myself. I accept myself. I approve of myself. As you do this, you're going to start to get a positive response. And once you've begun to learn and started to learn and love yourself and accept yourself as you are, then you're going to be able to accept all kinds of people in your lives, and you won't have problems with people. I can attest to the fact in 1980, I would go into a 12-step room and I could tell you what was wrong with 40 people. I really could. I was smart. I could see all the flaws. I can tell you 5 years later, I didn't have a word. I didn't have a thing to say really about them anymore, because I knew whatever I was focused on and I was critical about other people, I had finally understood. These were representations of issues I had within myself. When you really love yourself, everything in your life begins to work, and you're going to find you don't have problems with people, or they become less frequent. We cannot change other people. You hear me say that most weeks. Raymond Charles Barker, it's one of his famous lines. When he did a service and telling people how to change people, the sanctuary was filled. Everybody wanted to know how to do it, and then he wound up saying you can't do it. So we can't change other people. Another way of learning to love yourself is to stop trying to do it. Leave them alone. I mean, all that energy we spend on trying to change other people is a complete waste of time. That energy, Louise said, really could be directed towards making ourselves different. And when we are different, our whole life will change. Everyone, it's just the way it works, has to learn their own lessons. And I know people in Al-Anon and Coda, they really want to go in and kind of like fix everybody, but it doesn't work that way. One of the great lessons of AA was let the hand of AA be there when someone reaches out for help. So that really means, yeah, we are there. This center exists. You can watch us on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else. When somebody is ready, mysteriously they show up in classes like this. And if they stay plugged in and tuned in and watch the broadcasts, because we'll keep reminding you of how important you are, how wonderful you are, and that you're unique in the world, and you're a spiritual being, and you're here to grow and expand and flourish, and you have everything within. You have spirit within you that's wooing you, guiding you all the time. We function to remind you of that. I think that this would be a great place to break, because this is a seminar that goes on and on. So I'd like to this point, I'd like to stop now, and I want to hear from some of you. I want to hear really always what I ask, you know that, unless you're new. What's the inner dialogue been this week? And that means, have you been treating yourself like your own best friend? When you're off course, have you been putting yourself on course? I used to be lost for weeks sometimes, or I could be caught up in some type of state of consciousness where I'd be miserable. And I've learned through Ernest Holmes that suffering is not God ordained. And Bill Wilson said misery is optional. So where are you in terms of self-care this week? How quickly are you changing that conversation around to have it being loving? And what do you think about the idea of working with the mirror a little bit more?